Now for a really interesting tool, the Liquify tool. Alright, so before we go into it, this image is kind of large. It's 111 megabytes right now, so I'm gonna go ahead and select a smaller area to bring into Liquify, as it does take a lot of power to use this tool. So let's go ahead, and Liquify is in the filter menu. Let's go ahead and click on Liquify. Alright, this is the whole entire Liquify dialog. Kind of takes up your screen. And basically you have your control plus, control minus, zoom controls. You have your space bar, drag tools, but since we have, let me make it so it's larger, and then we can use space bar and then drag to drag around, so you can have that kind of controls here. Basically, the very first tool, and I say the most useful tool as well, is the forward warp tool. And this is the tool that we usually use to adjust body and facial size and sculpt different areas and things like that. So let's go ahead and start with that. And on the right hand side you have the brush size, and you can adjust that by just simply dragging on this lever. You can hold the left bracket key down, and that'll kind of slowly size it in increments of 2, or right bracket key to make it larger. Or you can hold down the shift key and the right bracket key or left bracket key for increments of 20 adjustment. That makes things a little bit faster when you're changing the size. The brush density and pressure I leave on the normal, which is default 50 and 100. And then this girl doesn't really need no adjustments at all. I'm just showing you for the sake of showing you. I'm gonna raise her eyebrow, and of course slight changes, slight adjustments go a long way, so you have to be careful and not to overdo it. And as you can see, it does slightly adjust the size of her eye as well, because I'm within my brush size is large enough to cover the eye. But you know, so make a little adjustment there, and then let's say I want to make the nose a slight smaller size. I can do that, and I am affecting the eye. So let's go ahead and shift left bracket, make the size smaller, and undo those changes to the eye, and make the nostril a little bit smaller. And while we're at it, might as well make her lips a little bit bigger and give her a slight smile there, kind of like that, maybe a little bit less. There we go. And then adjust her, let me make this a little bit bigger, and make, oops, her jaw a little bit smaller. And that looks pretty good. Okay, now below that we have the reconstruct tool. Say I made a huge adjustment that I did not like this for example in the hair. I can click on the reconstruct tool and basically bring it back to original, and my computer is working really hard, so bear with me while it processes it and takes it back to how it was. There it goes. So you have that tool. Some of the less useful tools is the clockwise twirl tool, and if you use it and you hold down Alt key, you can twirl to the left, and normally otherwise it twirls to the right. So for example, if I want to have our eyes at a slight angle, let me hold down the Alt key and give her a little twirl there, and then let go of the Alt key and give her a clockwise twirl on that eye. Just a little bit. Really don't need this. I'm just doing this for the sake of showing you. And as we move down, we have the pucker tool, which basically balloons things. Actually, no, it shrinks things. The blow tool balloons things. So if we wanted to shrink the bridge between her eyes, we can just click that just a tiny bit, because the longer you hold it down, the more of a stronger effect that you apply. And then the balloon tool is basically the exact opposite, and we can do that to this eye to make it slightly larger to match the other eye. There we go. Continue on. These other tools are really stupid. I don't lose them at all. The mirror tool or the push tool, you can kind of play with them yourself. And the turbulence tool is completely silly. You know, it's just basically a random combination of the buff tool that Photoshop applies for no particular reason. So not something you'd want to use. One thing to note is that there is a freeze mask tool. For example, if you want to affect a certain area of the image, say just the skin right here on her forehead without affecting the hair, you can do that by applying the freeze mask tool. Let me make this brush a little smaller here and just basically freeze everything except for the forehead. And you can delete some of this mask here. Oops, a little too much. And by the way, you do have undo here. The multiple undo and the standard undo is, you can hit Control Z to step back once, and you can also Control Alt, hold down the Control and the Alt key and hit the Z key to do a multi undo. You can also move back forward by holding the Control and Shift keys and pressing the Z button, and that'll move you forward to undo your undos, basically. Anyway, so let's delete a little bit more of this mask here. Anyways, let's go ahead and use the warp tool again, and I can drag this up. As you can see, only this forehead is affected. The hair is not affected at all because it's frozen by that mask. Let's go ahead and Alt Control Z to move back a few steps to get rid of that. And let's go ahead and delete this mask. Before pressing OK or canceling out of here, because if you press OK and you want to make a few more adjustments or maybe change something, you won't be able to do that with the control that you have already here. And if you cancel out, it'll basically lose every single thing that you have done so far to the image, and you'll just be canceled out. So what I prefer to do is save mesh, and then later you can load the mesh. But what that mesh is right here. If you click Show Mesh, that'll basically show a grid. Let's make this a larger grid so you can see what this is. Basically kind of like a matrix, and it shows you how much of an effect you applied and where by tweaking this grid here. And you can save this mesh whether or not Show Mesh is checked. So let's go ahead and save this mesh, and we'll come back to it later. We'll call it Liquify Mesh. There we go. And then now you can cancel or OK out of here, and I will OK out of here and wait till it applies the Liquify. And then if you're interested in knowing what the difference was, here's how it was previously, and here's with us applying that Liquify. A little silly, I know. This is just for the sake of me showing you. Now let's say you didn't want this much of an effect. You kind of like it overall, but you may say you didn't want the eyes to be so big, or maybe you don't like that smirk on the mouth. So let's fix the smirk on the mouth. Go back to let's go back to our rectangular selection tool and move that selection over, and then back into Liquify. And what we're going to do now is load that mesh that we've saved previously, and that'll basically apply all the changes we have done in Liquify the other time around. And now let's go ahead and use the reconstruct tool to reconstruct those lips back to normal, and maybe the eyes as well. There we go. Move those eyes back to how they were. I kind of like the brows as they are, and the nose. Maybe move this brow a little bit to the top by changing the size of this brush some more. There we go. Kind of like that, and then you can save the mesh again to update it if you like, to the new one or to the old one. And then let's go ahead and hit OK to get out of the Liquify tool. And as you can see, it updated it, and you have those changes that you made. And again, back to how it was original, and then after the Liquify tool. It's a really useful tool when used sparingly and not, too drastically. I kind of, looking at this again, I kind of don't like the chin. It looks a little too pointy to me. So you can go back in there and shift it up a little bit, or give somebody fuller breasts, or thin somebody out, or whatever you like. And just depending on the image, and you have full control, especially with that Save Mesh tool.